I finally understand what they mean by that, is it Helsinki syndrome, when people who've been kidnapped, when they're released, miss their kidnappers.
So I think if I had to pick one car to be my favorite of all time, and the one that I would choose if I had literally only one car that I could spend the rest of my life with, it would definitely, without a doubt, without any or at least very little hesitation, it would be the Lamborghini Aventador, because it's definitely just one of the most beautiful cars that you can buy that will still kill you when you crash it into something. So yeah, I want to tell you why. So let's get into it. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe. I am the car nerd, Jason Hassett, and hopefully these videos are getting better. If not, then don't subscribe, or do. No, please do, please. I need my kids. I need the wine, please. All right. Anyway, so the Lamborghini Aventador is the latest and still presently the latest until it's replaced, I believe, next year. V12 in the Lamborghini lineup. It was introduced in 2011, and interestingly, this is the first all new V12 in 50 years. Prior to that, it had been the same V12, just re engineered and upped in displacement since 1963. So to give a little background, Ferruccio Lamborghini set up Lamborghini in the early 60s, coming out with the 350 GT, the first V12 lineup that they've ever had. And this was a 3.5 litre, and there's very, very good reason for this being a 3.5 litre V12. The reason for it was that Ferruccio Lamborghini was a very wealthy entrepreneur who had a lot of different businesses. And he absolutely adored cars. He had lots of Alfa Romeos and other Italian marques. So he bought a Ferrari 250 GTB, I believe, or no, 250 GT. And essentially the clutch and everything went, and he had multiple problems with his Ferrari, and he thought that it had been built to an inferior quality. So he went up to Maranello and had a conversation, very normal, with Enzo Ferrari, because that was the time. And Enzo Ferrari kind of shooed him away and said, look, we'll fix it, but that's it. Very typical car dealer, especially even now, it's the same, but especially at the time. So Lamborghini, annoyed by this, went off and decided to compete head to head with Ferrari, and that's when he came out with the Ferrari 350 GT, which had a V12 at 300 or 3.5 litre, hence the 350. And this has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger over the years, and obviously in the Aventador you have the 6.5 litre V12. So they ran the V12 before this in the Mura, the Spada. They had it in the what else did they have it in? The Countach and the Diablo, and finally its final incarnation was in the Murcielago. And then Audi decided to essentially build it from the ground up. No one before this really wanted to put the time and effort into it, but Audi, obviously being Audi and being Volkswagen Group, had a lot of money to put behind this, so they decided to rebuild the engine from scratch, as they had taken it over when they built the Murcielago. Before the Murcielago, of course, you had the Countach, which was the Merman brothers, who invested heavily and kept Lamborghini alive when it was about to go bankrupt. They bought it in the late 70s, early 80s, and they were the ones who came out with the Countach, along with, I don't know if you've ever seen the off-roader, maybe I'll do a piece with it at some point, but they had an off-road Lamborghini, which was actually quite cool, and it had the same V12. So yeah, essentially every Lamborghini since then has been a V12. So the Diablo with Lee Iacocca, when it was under when it was bought by Chrysler, was a V12. So the only non V12 in their lineup these days is the V10s, which is the baby ones, such as the latest ones. So like the Gallardo and the Huracan, they're now like V10 baby Lamborghinis in the lineup. And before this, it was all V12s. And then, of course, now they've introduced the Urus, which is a V8. But other than that, Lamborghini always kept V12 in their 50-year history, and it's only a few V8s and V10s here or there. So essentially, the Aventador is the newest in their lineup, and I say newest because it's nearly 10 years old. But the Aventador is just absolutely stunning. I remember seeing it when it was reviewed by Richard Hammond and he did a very funny piece on the fact that they had switched what they wanted to do. So the Audi Lamborghini people in Italy decided to switch from handling being or top speed being most important to handling being most important. The reason this is funny is because the 6.5 litre all new V12 produces 690 brake horsepower with 502 feet-pounds of torque. And this isn't a heavy car, it's a wide car. All Lamborghinis and supercars, if you've ever driven one, you know, are quite wide. But then you get used to where I'm living right now, which is Mexico, for real this time, where a lot of people drive massive pickup trucks, so you just get used to a wide car. But it's very strange and very daunting the first time you get in a supercar or a Ferrari and realize how wide it is. And the Lamborghinis are very wide, visibility is very bad, but that's just the part of it. So they wanted to build something which was better performing, which they did. The Audi team worked religiously to make this car handle in the corners. It's got the rising air brakes. It's got the rising air filters into the engine bay, much like the old not Gallardo. It was the original Gallardo, I believe. Had it coming up, or no, it's the Murcielago, the original Murcielago. I think anyway. You can correct me on this. So they decided to stop focusing on just top speed and get this thing to handle. And what was funny about Hammond's thing was he basically said this is ridiculous, because it was like an Italian going, okay, it's not important. The top speed is not important. 217. So the Lamborghini Aventador will do 217 miles an hour flat out. But actually it'll do 220, because the year after, Sports Magazine decided to take it out on their test track and did 220 miles an hour. It'll also do 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds, which is absolutely ridiculous, especially for a car now 10 years ago. I mean, electric cars, yes, but 2.9 seconds is motorbike territory. So it's crazy fast. So performance-wise, this thing is just insane. Unfortunately, it does have the flappy paddle gearbox, but they've really pushed these flappy paddle gearbox to the edge now. These Formula 1 style gearboxes that Jeremy Clarkson calls flappy paddle, you can't really get a manual anymore. I think the last manual Lamborghini you could get was a Gallardo in the mid-2000s, and that was it. And it's gone pretty much that way now with every expensive Italian supercar. You just can't get a manual anymore, and that's just tough. It's just the way things are. So they've got the double clutch system, and to be honest, it's far better than a manual, because it can change in 50 milliseconds. It basically lines up the next gear, and it knows which way you're going to go using computers, and it figures that out. So it'll line that up, and you'll be able to go from one gear to another in 50 milliseconds. Now, I don't know about you, but I was in a Ford the other day, and I tried to change as quick as I could, and it was a second at the very least. I was able to count it. So let's be honest here, 50 milliseconds is ridiculous. You're not going to be able to do that. By far and away, the coolest thing about this car is how it looks like a fighter jet. And you know that Audi knew this, and that's what they were going for. It was very Murcielago, but if the Murcielago was taken by the US Navy and turned into a fighter jet, that's what this car looks like, and it's absolutely fantastic. And you'll notice this when you get into the dash as well, because they've got everything focused towards the driver, and the middle console, the center console is very driver focused as well. But one of the reasons that I think they knew this exactly is how you switch it on, which is you turn or you flip up a red lever, and the start button's underneath it, much like how as kids when you're playing games you flick it up, and the missile launcher in fighter jets that you would have on kids games and whatnot with the joysticks. So they knew that this was very fighter jet-esque, and that's what they were going for, let's be honest. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know if I had to give 10 minutes of a reason as to why I love the Lamborghini Aventador, because all you need to do is look at it and you'll understand. But I think if I had all the money in the world and someone said, look, you could only have one car, it would be the Aventador, without doubt. I would use it everywhere. It's four-wheel drive. It's practically a Range Rover. So that's why I would use the Aventador. It's practically a Range Rover. Thank you so much for watching. Tell me in the comments what your favorite car would be. and I'd love to hear from you guys on drivetribe.com as well. I'm going to be writing an article about the Aventador. I know, very boring or very exciting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for coming along, guys, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.